At least 14 people are dead in Kenya following a terrorist attack on an upscale hotel complex. We'll tell you what's behind Africa's bamboo bike boom. And foreign policy experts fear U.S. President Donald Trump might pull America out of NATO. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Residents in the Kenyan capital are still in shock on Wednesday following yet another senseless terrorist attack. With the horrific memories of 2013's Westgate shopping mall attack, which killed at least 67 people, still vivid in their minds, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta announced in a televised address that Tuesday's deadly attack on Nairobi's upscale Dusit D2 hotel complex, which includes restaurants, businesses and a bank, was now over. In a nationally televised address, Kenyatta said all the terrorists were eliminated in Tuesday's attack. The U.S. State Department said one American is among the dead. A British citizen was also reportedly killed in the attack.
We have confirmation that 14 innocent lives were lost through the hands of these murderous terrorists, with others injured. We are grieving as a country this morning, and my heart and that of every Kenyan goes out to the innocent men and women violated by senseless violence.
Kenyan security forces rescued hundreds of civilians caught in the siege at the Dusit D2 complex. Kenyans are urging the government to tighten security after the gunmen made their way into the hotel and office complex in Nairobi.
We are blaming our internal security staff because how did these people get into our country? And we have our security all over around.
The attack on the complex began in mid-afternoon with an explosion outside a bank and a suicide bombing in the hotel lobby.
Just when I reached the ground floor, I saw a woman get shot, and then that's when I took the stairs back to the first floor. And then someone actually locked me outside because I'm not from their office. And then we went to the washrooms. We were like 7 people in the same washroom.
Several hours after Kenya's Interior Minister Fred Matiang'i said the situation was under control, gunshots could still be heard. It's unclear who was targeted in the attack. The militant Islamic group Al-Shabaab has claimed several previous attacks in Kenya, including the September 2013 assault on Nairobi's Westgate Mall. And for more on Tuesday's terror attack in Kenya, I'm joined on the phone from Nairobi by retired captain and security analyst Simiyu Werunga. Good evening, Captain Werunga.
Good evening, Esther.
Obviously, a very difficult time in Kenya right now, and this senseless killing just makes a lot of people wonder, is there really security for Kenyans? There have been several attacks by Al-Shabaab. What is your take on this latest attack?
I think, one, yes, there's some security in this country because they don't happen on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. But yes, again, we must ask ourselves, how have we become such a vulnerable to these people that every time we are having issues of these people attacking our country, causing mayhem and killing so many people? But I think we need to understand where Kenya is in the context of the region. Kenya hosted a big number of refugees in this country. Most of them found their way inside the country without valid papers. Most of them found their ways into the country with valid papers, going to schools, going to colleges, going for trainings. And therefore it has become, to my understanding, a bit difficult for the country to have the capacity to identify who is a really Kenyan Somali and who is a really Somali from Somaliland. That gives us a difficult scenario on how we can start profiling people we suspect as a country to be terrorists. And I think that's why Kenya is slightly different from the rest of the region, because of the context in which I've given you.
But you know, Captain Werunga, Kenya is in Somalia trying to help stabilize the country. However, if you look at, it's not only Kenya that is, it's not only Kenyan forces that are in Somalia helping to stabilize the country. Ethiopia is also involved. Captain Werunga, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Captain Werunga? Hello? Captain, can you hear me? Okay, looks like we've lost the line again in Nairobi. We're moving on to Zimbabwe. It appears that the president of Zimbabwe is counting on Russia to help his country through its worst economic crisis in a decade. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Tuesday in hopes of securing long-term loans amid turmoil in Zimbabwe caused by the severe economic downturn and protests against fuel hikes. Representatives from both governments exchanged several documents, but the specifics of the possible agreements were not immediately disclosed. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe police armed with AK-47 rifles arrested Evan Mawarire, an activist and pastor, at his home in Harare on Wednesday morning as a crackdown grew over protests against dramatic fuel price hikes in the economically shattered country. In 2016, Mawarire organized what became a nationwide anti-government protest against government mismanagement and then long-time President Robert Mugabe's stay in power. There have been widespread reports of violence as the country faced a third day of protests, with other arrests being reported. A spokesman for the main opposition MDC party, Nkululeko Sibanda, said in a Twitter post that the party's leadership had been detained and that the political crisis in the country is deepening. According to Amnesty International, 8 people were killed on Monday when police and military fired on crowds. Mawarire's lawyer, Beatrice Mtetwa, spoke to reporters about his arrest.
They're alleging that he has incited violence through Twitter and other forms of social media, particularly in the Central Business District. We've asked for full particulars, when, how. They say they don't know. They'll give that to him at the police station. We've asked how asking for people to stay away can constitute incitement to violence.
As Zimbabwe's economic crisis continues, President Mnangagwa is making an extended overseas trip that will include a stop at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Prosecutors from the International Criminal Court said Wednesday they would appeal the acquittal of former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo and urged judges to bar him from returning to his homeland. Judges cleared Gbagbo and his right-hand man, Charles Blé Goudé, on Tuesday of charges of crimes against humanity over a wave of post-electoral violence in 2010 and 2011, in which some 3,000 people died. The Hague-based court also ordered that the 2 men should be freed, but postponed this pending a hearing on Wednesday where prosecutors opposed any unconditional release. Prosecutors say there are exceptional reasons to oppose Gbagbo's unconditional release, citing what they termed as a concrete risk that he would not come back if their appeal was successful and the trial was to continue. But lawyers for Gbagbo and Goudé disagree with the prosecutors.
He was acquitted of all the charges that the prosecutor had brought against him. Under these conditions, Mr. Chairman, Madam, Sir, it makes no sense to consider that Laurent Gbagbo is looking to evade justice.
And Mr. President, this is the essence of today. These 2 individuals are acquitted. They should be given back their natural right to freedom.
Now, the decision to acquit the 2 men sparked wild scenes of joy in Ivory Coast and in The Hague. Bamboo bicycle startups in Africa offering cycling enthusiasts a cheaper alternative to ordinary bikes with a brand made from bamboo. The new bicycles are generating a lot of interest on the international market. Here's Africa 54's Paul Ndiho.
At a workshop in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, Nordin Kasoma inspects homemade bicycles produced by his company. The entrepreneur has developed a process to recycle damaged steel bikes, replacing the metal frames with bamboo before putting them on the market. Nordin learned to make bikes after training with an American bike frame designer and manufacturer and watching tutorials on the internet. His goal is to build bicycles that are cheaper and tougher than conventional than the brands available locally.
Bamboo is flexible. Due to that flexibility, it gives that kind of shock-absorbing property. When you're riding, especially on the off-roads, the bamboo itself tries to absorb the shocks that you're passing through, either in steel or aluminium.
It takes Nordin about 7 days to assemble a bicycle. The bamboo must be dried for several months, and the bikes cost between $350 to $450 each, depending on the size and the design. Nordin says his business employs about 20 workers. He is also teaching young apprentices the unique production specifications of his bicycles. Nordin is planning to expand his business locally as well as internationally.
Get geometrical diagrams of different types of bikes and different sizes. We normally make mountain bikes, city bikes, and travel bikes, and then we have the road bikes, the racing bikes. So every type of bicycle has different geometry and different sizes.
In Ghana, another entrepreneur peddling bamboo bicycles is making a mark on the international market. Boomers International, a grassroots community development organization, is specializing in producing bamboo-framed bicycles for export around the world. Kobena Danso is the CEO of Boomers International.
Our whole focus is to train rural youth with the skills of building bamboo bicycles to give them employment, and also be able to market this to support both on the international and the local market.
Located in the Ashanti region of Kumasi, Ghana, the Yansu project dares to be bold. Their bamboo bikes have a striking design, one that commands attention. For what it's worth, I was given an opportunity to take it on a test drive. As Boomers International seizes the opportunity to make use of bamboo, an abundant natural resource, the company is also investing in the sustainability and development of local communities.
For every bike that is sold, a child in the rural area also gets education. So we're trying to promote education, support rural community development through education, empower these children in the rural communities by the sales of our bikes.
Bicycle analysts say Africa's fast-growing population and rapid urban development has meant more cars on the roads. But having locally manufactured and affordable bikes could ease the crash of people using public transportation. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May faces a confidence vote Wednesday after suffering a historic defeat in Parliament Tuesday when British lawmakers overwhelmingly rejected the deal she struck with Brussels for leaving the European Union later this year. Many in her own party voted against the deal, but Prime Minister May is vowing to carry on. As Henry Ridgwell reports, Europe has warned the risks of Britain crashing out with no deal have increased.
Outside Parliament, rival protesters faced off into the night Tuesday. Inside, the political drama culminated in a bruising defeat.
The ayes to the right, 202. The noes to the left, 432.
The biggest government defeat by 230 votes in recent British history. Normally, that would force the Prime Minister's resignation, but she vowed to carry on.
The government has heard what the House has said tonight, but I ask members on all sides of the House to listen to the British people who want this issue settled.
The Prime Minister will face a vote of confidence in her government Wednesday, tabled by opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn.
She cannot seriously believe that after 2 years of failure, she is capable of negotiating a good deal for the people of this country.
Despite Tuesday's defeat, May will likely survive Wednesday's vote of no confidence. She vowed to seek consensus on the way forward. Her best hope is persuading the EU to offer more concessions on the deal to satisfy MPs.
If only to give an excuse for those MPs on her side who are getting worried but have committed themselves to opposing the deal, a fig leaf, if you like, to allow them to say, I had my concerns, they've been assuaged by this document from the European Union, now I can change my mind and vote with the Prime Minister or at least abstain.
But the EU has ruled out reopening the deal. EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said after the vote the risk of a disorderly withdrawal has increased. In London, rival lawmakers are plotting their next move. Some pro-Brexit MPs want to leave the EU without a deal. Others are pushing for a softer exit or a second referendum.
We're confronted with a range of outcomes. They all seem enormously implausible. The deal passing, having another referendum, general election, no deal. One of them will happen.
Meanwhile, the protests are becoming more heated.
80-odd% of people my age are wanting to remain in the EU, and yet their voices are being shouted over by the older generations, those of them who want to leave, when we're the ones who are going to have to live for the longest with the consequences of this.
There's so many benefits of us leaving the European Union, and most of all, we can take back control of so many powers which we've given away.
Britain is in uncharted political waters, but one thing is for certain. Whatever happens in Parliament in the coming weeks, on the street, the divides across society will take far longer to heal. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, will President Donald Trump pull the U.S. out of NATO? But first, a look at Wednesday's headlines.
Now confirm.
In Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta said a terrorist attack that killed at least 14 people at a hotel on Tuesday in Nairobi is over.
Please be seated.
In the Netherlands, prosecutors at the International Criminal Court will appeal Tuesday's unexpected acquittal of former Ivory Coast President Laurent Gbagbo on charges of crimes against humanity. In Zimbabwe, political activist Evan Mawarire was arrested in his home for allegedly inciting violence during the third day of a strike over high fuel prices. Finally, in Senegal, President Macky Sall, who is up for re-election next month, has launched the first phase of the multi-million-dollar Dakar Regional Express Train project, which will link the capital city with its suburbs and eventually the international airport.
President Donald Trump and congressional leaders grapple with contentious issues surrounding the security of the country's southern border with Mexico. U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he is hopeful a group of bipartisan lawmakers might break the stalemate between the president and the Democratic leadership to reopen shuttered agencies, while he has more talks with Democratic leaders about his plan for a wall along the southern U.S. border. Senator Graham, one of Trump's staunchest congressional supporters, spoke about the potential of a breakthrough to end the partial government shutdown and take steps to address Trump's demand for over just $5 billion for the wall.
I think there's a growing group of senators on the Democratic side who do not share Nancy Pelosi's view. You get $1 for the wall and that's it. There are plenty of Democrats who are willing to help the president meet his priorities in a reasonable fashion if they get something too. So I'm hoping in the next 24 hours there will emerge a group of Republicans and Democrats who will basically ask the president jointly to give us a few weeks to work on this with you to see if we can produce a result in the Senate.
It is unclear whether a bipartisan effort will sway Trump, who suggested Monday he is not interested in any proposal to temporarily reopen governments. Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling on Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to allow a vote on legislation already approved by the House of Representatives to reopen shuttered agencies. Some 800,000 federal employees are either furloughed or working without pay. A New York Times report says President Donald Trump told aides on several occasions last year that he wanted to withdraw the United States from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, which has been in place since 1949. While President Trump has gone back and forth on the issue, foreign policy experts say the move would weaken the alliance and embolden Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has long criticized the defense alliance. VOA diplomatic correspondent Sidney Sain has more from Washington.
For some 70 years, NATO has been viewed as a crucial pillar of stability by U.S. presidents and lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans alike. But Trump's views on the alliance during his 2016 campaign broke with that bipartisan consensus.
Let me tell you, NATO is obsolete. It was 67 years, or it's over 60 years old. It is, many countries, doesn't cover terrorism, okay? It covers the Soviet Union, which is no longer in existence.
Since his election, President Trump has said he no longer considers NATO obsolete. But he has repeatedly pressed European allies to increase their contributions, like at this summit last July.
For years, presidents have been coming to these meetings and talked about the expense, the tremendous expense for the United States, and tremendous progress has been made. Everyone's agreed to substantially up their commitment. They're going to up it at levels that they've never thought of before.
Reacting to Tuesday's New York Times report, analysts say the recent departure of Defense Secretary James Mattis has them worried about the future of NATO.
I think Secretary Mattis was the primary brake on President Trump's ambitions and interests in leaving the alliance. His removal creates an unbelievable opportunity for the president and for anyone else in the administration who does not see the value of the NATO alliance to push forward with withdrawal.
If this happens, Russian President Vladimir Putin would be the main benefactor, warns Simakovsky.
It would be a significant gift to him, and he would see it as an open invitation for future aggression in Europe.
Some experts say it may be time for the U.S. Congress to send a message to the president by holding a symbolic vote expressing how vital NATO is to U.S. national security and world stability. Cindy Sain, VOA News, Washington.
Now take a minute and think about your heart. Can you hear it beating? Probably not, but you know it is. Now imagine your heartbeat in color with rhythmic lighting to match. You can now see your unique beat pattern at a new interactive exhibit called Pulse at the Herschel Museum in Washington, D.C. In this Log-On segment, VOA's Caroline Presutti shows us how your heartbeat joins others and becomes art.
You see it before you hear it. That's a heart. The lights dance to its pulsing beat. Grab the sensors and the closest light bulb flickers. Your heartbeat joins the hundreds of others before you as the bulbs strobe to match your heart's rhythm. This is Pulse, an interactive exhibit at Washington's Hirshhorn Museum.
We have computers in the wall. You don't see them.
A lighting interface transports the biometrics to the 300-watt light bulbs hanging 3 meters from the ceiling. Stefan Akan is the museum's curator.
It's an incandescent light bulb. It vibrates or pulsates at the rate of your heart.
In another room, a finger sensor combines with a digital microscope and a heart rate monitor. A projector displays the fingerprint onto an LCD screen, covering an entire gallery wall. Near the computer interface is an EKG image that shows the pulse rate. A third room translates heartbeats into ripples in an illuminated pool of water until the ripples slow and calmly stop, like a life. We brought someone to see Pulse who's passionate about art and the heart.
Nice, steady, normal
heartbeat. Cardiologist Susan Bennett says the exhibit offers someone like her more than art.
If there was a person who had atrial fibrillation and you brought them up and you asked me to take a look at this art exhibit, I would be able to tell they were in atrial fibrillation.
Back in the first room, the pulsing is constant. As a new heartbeat enters the grid, it pushes the others to the next light bulb. After the 211th heartbeat, yours disappears. The artist says it's to remind us of what a short time we have on this planet. Carolyn Presutti, VOA News, Washington.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Four-legged friends were not forgotten about at the just concluded Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. With a special pet-playing robot wooing animal lovers at the exhibition, the Varam Pet Fitness robot can interact with pets when they are left home alone and feeds them some food so that the animals won't feel bored or lonely when their owner is out. The device can also be connected with an application on the owner's cell phone, giving data which details how long the robot plays with the pet and how much food has been consumed, according to the exhibitor of the robot. Next up, Braille, a written language where characters are represented by raised dot patterns, has brought the joy of reading to millions of blind and partially sighted people. But in its printed form, it's not convenient or portable. British firm Bristol Braille Technology hopes to change this with their Kindle for the blind. They say the Canute 360 is the world's first multi-line Braille e-reader, displaying 9 lines of Braille at a time, equating to about a third of a page of regular printed text. When the reader reaches the end of a page, they simply press a button to display the next page. The final prototype will enter mass production later this year. An exact price is yet to be determined, although the company says it will be similar to a high-end laptop. And finally, Ogona Arumemi is an artist with a difference. She used to run a food and pastry business in Britain and wanted to start a similar outfit in Lagos using food as a means of artistic expression. She's often hired to prepare dessert displays at events like weddings and corporate functions in Lagos. Her repertoire includes flowers, custom designs, and cartoon and fantasy characters. Ogona's dessert displays cost about $83 and up, depending on the type of design and fruits used. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.